On June 28, 1914, a single moment of violence in the heart of Sarajevo ignited a chain of events that would reshape the world. Gabriel Princip, a young Bosnian Serb nationalist, stepped out from the shadows and fired two fateful shots, killing Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary and his wife Sophie. This assassination, a seemingly isolated act of rebellion, would set the stage for a cataclysmic global conflict. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand was the match that lit the fuse of a powder keg long in the making, as alliances, military build-ups and nationalist fervor converged to drag nations into the abyss of war. Within weeks, the world found itself embroiled in a conflict unlike any other, a war that would devastate empires, redraw borders, and alter the course of history forever. Focus of today: how World War I changed the world order. As the guns of August 1914 roared to life, the world was plunged into a conflict that would stretch far beyond the battlefields of Europe. World War I, or the Great War as it was then known, was more than just a brutal struggle for territorial dominance. It was a war that tore apart the old world order, dislodged monarchies, and set the stage for the modern era. The war not only altered the political landscapes of the nations involved, but also transformed the social and economic structures of societies across the globe. Today, we explore the profound impact World War I had on the world, forever changing the way nations interact, the balance of power, and the very fabric of society. Europe before World War I. Before the outbreak of World War I, Europe was the epicenter of global power and influence. The continent was dominated by a handful of great empires, each with vast colonial holdings and immense military might. The British Empire, with its unparalleled naval power, ruled the seas and controlled territories across every inhabited continent. France, though scarred by its defeat in the Franco-Prussian War, was still a formidable power, with a vast empire in Africa and Asia. Germany, a rising industrial powerhouse, had unified only a few decades earlier and was eager to assert its place on the world stage. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a patchwork of ethnicities and languages, struggled to maintain unity within its borders. Meanwhile, the Russian Empire, vast and autocratic, was grappling with internal strife and the challenges of modernization. In this pre-war Europe, the old order was upheld by a delicate balance of power. The continent was crisscrossed by a web of alliances, treaties, and agreements meant to maintain peace and prevent any one nation from becoming too powerful. Yet beneath this veneer of stability, tensions simmered. Nationalism was on the rise, particularly in the Balkans, where Slavic peoples chafed under Austro-Hungarian rule. Militarism had taken hold across the continent, with nations competing in an arms race to build the most powerful armies and navies. The economic disparities between the old world and the industrializing new powers added further strain. Europe, though seemingly stable, was a continent on the brink of chaos. The two sides of World War I. When war finally broke out in 1914, the world divided into two major alliances: the Allied powers and the Central powers. Each side was composed of nations with distinct political and governmental structures, all driven by a mix of ambition, fear, and obligation. The Allied powers, the United Kingdom, ruled by King George V, was a constitutional monarchy with a well-established parliamentary system. Britain's vast empire provided resources and manpower, but also made it a target for German expansionism. The war effort would eventually strain the empire, leading to increased demands for independence from its colonies. France, under President Raymond Poincaré, was a republic with deep scars from its defeat by Prussia in 1871. Driven by a desire for revenge and the recovery of lost territories, France entered the war with a resolve to reclaim its position as a leading European power. The Russian Empire under Tsar Nicholas II was an autocracy struggling with internal dissent. The Tsar's absolute rule was increasingly challenged by revolutionary movements. The war would exacerbate these tensions, ultimately leading to the Russian Revolution and the fall of the Romanov dynasty. Italy, initially neutral, joined the Allies in 1915, lured by promises of territorial gains. Italy's government was a constitutional monarchy, but its entry into the war was driven by a mix of national ambition and political opportunism. The United States, though it entered the war late in 1917, played a decisive role. Under President Woodrow Wilson, the US was a democratic republic, with its involvement driven by a mix of idealism and economic interests. Wilson's vision of a post-war world order would have a lasting impact on global politics. The Central Powers, Germany, led by Kaiser Wilhelm II, was an empire driven by militarism and national pride. The Kaiser's aggressive foreign policy and desire for imperial expansion were key factors in the lead-up to the war. Germany's authoritarian regime, with its powerful military-industrial complex, was central to the war's brutal conduct. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, under Emperor Franz Joseph I, was a fragile, multi-ethnic empire struggling to maintain unity. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne, provided the pretext for war as the empire sought to assert its dominance over the Balkans. The Ottoman Empire, once a dominant power, was in decline by the early 20th century. Ruled by Sultan Mehmed V, the empire joined the Central Powers in hopes of regaining lost territories and restoring its waning influence. The war would accelerate the empire's disintegration, leading to its eventual collapse. Bulgaria, a monarchy under Tsar Ferdinand I, joined the Central Powers in 1915, seeking to expand its territory at the expense of its neighbors. The war would ultimately lead to Bulgaria's defeat and the abdication of its Tsar. These nations, with their complex political systems and imperial ambitions, were drawn into a conflict that none could have fully anticipated. The war would test their governments and societies to the breaking point, leading to the collapse of empires and the rise of new political ideologies. The aftermath. A new world order emerges. When the guns finally fell silent on November 11, 1918, the world was a vastly different place. The Great War had left a trail of destruction across Europe, with millions dead and entire cities in ruins. But the war's impact went far beyond the battlefield. The old world order, with its empires and monarchies, had been irrevocably shattered. The fall of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the multi-ethnic empire that had dominated Central Europe for centuries, was dismantled. Its territories were carved up into new nation-states such as Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Yugoslavia, leading to a new and unstable political landscape in Eastern Europe. The end of the German Empire. Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated and fled to exile, marking the end of the German Empire. In its place, the Weimar Republic was established, a fragile democracy that would face immense challenges in the years to come, setting the stage for the rise of Adolf Hitler and World War II. The Russian Revolution and the rise of communism. The war exacerbated the internal strife in Russia, leading to the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. The Romanov dynasty was overthrown, and the world's first communist state was established under Vladimir Lenin. This would lead to a new ideological conflict that would dominate global politics for much of the 20th century. The decline of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire, already in decline before the war, was dismantled in its aftermath. Its territories were divided among the victorious Allied powers, leading to the creation of new nations in the Middle East and sowing the seeds of future conflict in the region. The Treaty of Versailles and the seeds of future conflict. The Treaty of Versailles, which formally ended the war, imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including significant territorial losses, military restrictions, and crippling reparations. The treaty's punitive terms would foster resentment in Germany, contributing to the rise of Nazism and the outbreak of World War II. A new global power structure. The United States emerged from the war as a global power, with President Wilson advocating for the League of Nations, a precursor to the United Nations. Although the US would retreat into isolationism for a time, its economic and military power was undeniable. Meanwhile, Britain and France, though victorious, were weakened by the war, leading to the eventual decline of their empires, societal changes, and the rise of new ideologies. The war had profound social impacts, leading to greater demands for democracy and workers' rights. Women, who had played crucial roles in the war effort, began to demand greater rights, leading to the suffrage movement gaining momentum in many countries. The war also led to the spread of new ideologies, such as fascism and communism, which would shape the 20th century. The war that remade the world. World War I was more than just a conflict between nations. It was a crucible in which the modern world was forged. The war destroyed the old world order, sweeping away empires and monarchies.